football fans. Welcome to a Wednesday episode of the Call Sheet Daily Podcast. I'm your host, Kevin Smith, here on the Fans First Sports Network. It's Whiteboard Wednesday, favorite day of the week. I get to talk to real football coaches about the great game of football. And today, my guest is Coach Brian Hindle, and we're going to talk about some triple option, some old school triple option football. And I'm going to bring Coach Hindle in right now. Coach, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. So, Brian and I are coaching together now at Ocean City High School. He's been a head coach and coached at various places. Tell us real quick, Coach, about your football journey.
So obviously, I played high school football in Cape May County. I continued my athletic career as a college wrestler and finished my career in college by coaching at Edinburgh University as a student assistant under slipped my name now, but they were great coaches up there. And I came back home. I coached at Middle Township High School for 3 years, and then took a year off and was hired at 26 years old to be the head football coach at Lower Cape May Regional. So, and then it led me to Ocean City. I coached at Lower Cape May for 4 years, and I'm back at it this year. So having a lot of fun with you guys.
26 years old as a head coach. I won't get into all the nuances of that, but there was probably an awful lot of challenges that you couldn't even anticipate when you got that job.
Oh, you learn so much your first time through. You want to change so many things if you can go back. But I learned a lot of great lessons, met a lot of great people, and kind of learned on the fly.
Yeah.
So
So you were. It was interesting. We played you guys when you were the head coach down there, and you were running a true triple option scheme. And I want to get into that conversation because it's interesting. This is an offense that has really evolved over time. I mean, when you think about the origins of triple option, I mean, when I was a little kid, it was Wishbone and it was Veer. You had the big, well, it's now the Big 12. Way back then, it was the Big 8 or the Southwest Conference. Those were schools that were really highly invested in this particular offense. It's come a long way since then. But before we get into its evolution, why the triple option? Why did you think that was beneficial for your program when you were running it?
so what we were looking for is it was actually funny. I was teaching in the same school. We were teaching at an elementary school, my defense coordinator and I, and we crossed paths in the hallway. And we were running an up-tempo spread style offense. We ran a little bit of power, but we were mainly out of the pistol, up tempo as fast as you could possibly go. But we were going three and out and giving the ball right back to the other offense. And I mean, there were first quarters where we were down by 35, 40 points. So he looked at me, he goes, "Did you ever think about the triple?" And I'm like, "What do you mean the triple?" He's like, "What do you think about option?" So we actually started and we actually implemented it right before our game against Ocean City in my first year. So it was rough. It was really rough the first year, but we kind of knuckled down and went and did some learning from Navy, the Naval Academy. Actually had a lot of really great experience with the NAPS coaches, their prep school, because they really pared it down and they wanted core concepts to be something that each NAPS player went to the Naval Academy knowing. So our thought process was, hey, can we control time of possession? That was our number one focus was, can we hold on to the ball? We were actually in a staff meeting the other day, you were talking about 17 play drives. That was our bread and butter. If we could have a 17 play drive, if we could get the ball midway through the first quarter and not give it back till halftime and have a touchdown out of that, that was a win for us. So our idea was to kind of shorten the game, allow our defense to be more aggressive, hopefully cause turnovers, and hold the ball. And the other thing is, if you don't have a five-tool player, we talk about in our offense, our H-backs are our five-tool players, right? They're absolutely amazing athletes. They can block, they can catch, they can do a little bit of everything. We didn't have many five-tool players, so what we tried to do was take five players with a tool and put them together to be the best thing that they could be. And in our offense, our three best players were our center, our quarterback, and our B-back. And we just tried to go straight. It's the shortest distance between 2 points is a straight line. So we tried to go straight up the field.
Interesting. So you think about some of the teams today who are still running triple, and you mentioned Navy, they are notorious for being undersized, not having the same level of athletes as some of their opponents, and yet being able to pull off these ridiculous upsets. And it's probably for some of the reasons that you just talked about, that this is an offense where you can grind clock, where if you're executing it well, it's frustrating to defend because it's death by a thousand cuts. Why the Navy version though? There's lots of different versions of triple, and I mentioned at the beginning of the show how it's gone from the wishbone. I remember when I was in high school playing against Atlantic City High School, and they were running the true wishbone, and that was pretty cool to actually see now that I think think about it.
We
But
ran it
again,
in middle school.
you ran
We
it in
ran it
middle
in
school
middle
the
school.
wishbone. All
Yeah.
right, yeah,
Yeah.
all
Our
right. So
coach
right,
brought it
so
back.
yeah,
Yeah.
wishbone and veer and midline and all these different options. Like why the Navy version? What's attractive about that?
Well, so if you go back and you look at it, you had the split T in the 50s, right? And then that kind of actually it changed into the wishbone. And the wishbone was developed, they say it's developed Barry Switzer gave the onus to a middle school football coach who came up with the wishbone because his fullback was too slow in the split T. So he moved his fullback up. And then as it went on, you had the University of Texas in the 60s. They averaged 40 points a game running the wishbone and the true triple. Then Barry Switzer goes over to Oklahoma, and they kind of really popularize it through the late 70s and the 80s. I mean, the stats you see from the wishbone back in the day, 785 yards of total offense, like it was unstoppable. But one of the biggest things that you see are the changes in the rules in football as time progressed. The chop block. I know in 2018, I went to I would do the circuit of clinics in the off season, and I'd have to be very creative because, like you said, wishbone or triple option, whatever it might be, is not the most popular thing. So I'd have to find wings and things clinics. I went up to went down to Annapolis, went up to West Point, and I remember in 2018 they were all very concerned because the cut block was taken out of college football, which really makes it hard as for an A back to execute on a safety that's screaming downhill or a cover two corner out in the flat. So you asked why the Navy version. Um, the Navy version actually, really honestly, just by default, it was the thing that we saw on TV the most, and we kind of led our way into that. Um, the Flexbone itself, though, was actually developed by two people, Fisher DeBerry in Air Force, and they were actually a little bit more focused on passing, whereas Paul Johnson at Hawaii, he was at Hawaii, and they were running the run and shoot, which has all of the motions that we see today in the true Flexbone. So Paul Johnson passed it to Ken Niedermeyer which is not an easy name to say, at Navy, and we kind of hammered down on that. I did learn also the Army version, which, as we discussed the other day, it's a little bit more wing T, wing T based. I think we lost connection here.
Oh, you got me there.
Yeah, I got you.
Okay, yeah, I lost
I
you.
talked for a while. I didn't know. I
That
didn't know if you were still getting it or not.
that's okay. We'll clean it up in the edit. We'll just go back and we'll pick it up. And when I see the ticker at the top. When it hits 10 minutes, I'll just like point it, and you can kind of pick up with like you were talking about going up to Navy and Army and stuff like that.
Okay.
All right, thanks.
So, like I said, I think the primary reason we settled in on Army and Navy is because that's what we saw on television the most, and that's what we learned. We were like, we can do that. And so we went up to West. I went up to West Point, and learned a little bit of Brent Davis's offense, which was very it was one word based. Everything's one word based, but it was a lot of wing T style things. If you noticed back in the 2018, 2019 times, they had a lot of tight end wing, which is not true to the flex bone style. The flex bone style, if you did want to get a three-man surface, you would go tackle over. Um, or you could reduce down your wide receiver, but you would actually flex them and turn them inside. Um, so really, it was kind of interesting as I did a little bit of research for this podcast. Paul Johnson obviously was a legend. Everybody knows he was a legend down at Georgia Tech and then Georgia Southern. But he got a start obviously in Hawaii. We all know that. But he actually took the run and shoot and made it into the flexbone today. The run and shoot, formation is that flexbone formation, and you have all that motion and all the movement, all the eye candy, and he turned that into what we know as the flexbone. So we really just hammered down on what we could learn and what was readily available to us.
Yeah, I'm gonna get into the passing game in a minute because I think that's an interesting conversation when you start talking about triple option teams. How do they handle the passing game? Before we do that, let's talk about your quarterbacks because if you're going to make this offense go, you need a great decision maker, a tough kid, a versatile kid who can handle a lot of different tasks. I mean, this is not the easiest thing to find a real triple option quarterback. So what exactly did you look for? What kind of kid did you need to play quarterback?
It was your best player. You just picked your best player and you put him in a quarterback. If he wasn't the best thrower of the football, we could work around that, right? He needed to be tough, he needed to be athletic, and he needed to be he had to be your best kid, not only like on the field but between the ears. Um, our best year running this, our quarterback had 720 yards passing, and I believe he had 900 yards rushing. As a team, we had 2,300 yards rushing on 400 carries. So, you're running the ball, you're averaging like 6 yards a carry, you're hammering it. Every pass was going for about 20 yards. So that's where you got your splash plays. You got your splash plays on, play action, and anytime you got to the third progression of triple. But the common misnomer is that triple option is truly a triple option. Our best play was midline double. And a lot of times midline double, you can insert the A back. You can do like rewind motion and insert them vertical. You could put the backside A back in motion early and insert him ahead of the play, almost like a schoolhouse right play where you're getting two lead blockers in for the fullback. So what we did is we had a very fast quarterback the first 2 years I was there, and he always wanted to get out to the edge. So we actually ran zone option, which is a concept that Navy runs a lot. Anytime you see the quarterback step back, take a gather step, allow the B back to clear, that's zone option. When you see him step off the midline and literally the B back, when we designed our offense, we didn't put holes, we didn't put aiming points. We told him to run up the back of the center or run up the back of the guard, and it was the offensive line's job to move out of the way. Something I missed earlier, you said, why go with this? Another reason was we didn't have a lot of like big road grader offensive linemen. So I sat in a great clinic on a guy who was running split line veer, and he said, or split back veer, and he said, you have trucks, cars, and bikes, on the defense. The trucks are the offensive or defensive linemen, the cars are your linebackers, and the bikes are your safety. And he said, I don't want to block a truck with a truck because my trucks aren't big. So what he would do is he try to get the trucks on the cars. So your offensive line has to be quick. It needs to move out of the way. And to get back to your original question, the quarterback needs to be somebody who's willing to run between the tackles because part of the reason we're running this is because we really didn't have a great outside run threat. So if he's stretching it to the outside, he's getting caught. And the way we counteract that is with like things like rocket toss and stuff like that, where you have someone running full speed who catches the ball outside the tackle box. So
Yeah. So it's interesting. The phrase I've often heard people use when they talk about blocking in the triple is to unblock defenders, right? If you got a dude who's at 3 tech who that you're just not going to be able to wash him down. Well, let's read him. Let's unblock him and make him
yeah, you run
wrong.
right at him.
Yeah, you run that midline
Absolutely.
concept. How did you decide where you were going to make your reads each week? Was it basically like who's the defender that we want to key off of, or was it predicated more upon what you thought you would do well? Were you essentially approaching your game plan based upon what the defense presented you, or what you felt you could do best?
We were in a unique situation where I felt as though the if we weren't good at it, it didn't matter if it was the right play to call. A lot of times you just have to run what you're best at, right? And so a lot of times, and what we really struggled with, a great way to overcome the triple option is to move the front. Middle Township used to do that to us all the time. Matt Wolf over at Middle, he would always stem his front late. And so that's when we would just have to, like, we would put that to a tracks call, right? So, but for when you're running triple, you're trying to scoop that three tech. So they reduce surface area. You have a drill where they have to grab a towel off the ground as they're getting up to the next level. So the whole idea, like you said, unblock players, you have to really, really, really stress that. And then all of a sudden, if that player you're trying to unblock moves, they kind of it really would stress our play. So we would get up to the line of scrimmage. We would have a lot of freeze calls, a lot of dummy calls, let them move, and then we could signal from the sideline the right play to get into based on the front. So similar to what a lot of the spread teams do, where they're looking at is this a rotating shell? Is this a just a standard too high? What's my best RPO to get into? We were literally looking at down linemen and saying, oh wow, they just shifted the three tech to the field. Let's run midline to the field. So that's kind of what we would try to do. And like I said, midline was our best play. It was a quick hitter. We had a good fullback. Your fullback in the triple, you'll notice the Navy fullbacks are always running at almost looks like a 30-degree angle. They're almost hovering over the ground because they have so much forward lean. So as long as someone's willing to punch it up in the right over the center's back, you can be very successful with it. So we would just stick with what we were good at.
Right. I mentioned earlier the passing game. So teams that want to defend this offense oftentimes are going to put their safeties as close to the line of scrimmage as they can. You're usually, you oftentimes you get these too high shells because you have to protect the vertical routes, but you want them to be run fitters. You want them to insert quickly into the run game. How did you handle the fact that you have a largely horizontally based offense, all that side to side motion? But it's interesting because a lot of these offenses are vertical in their passing game. So what was the core of your passing game, and how did you handle, or how did you try to develop a passing game out of an offense that's overwhelmingly built to run the ball?
So our whole passing game was based out of play action, right? And what we would run, the best scheme I actually picked up from Salisbury, and what they do is they run a backside slant, and then they run a play side fade, and that play side, and so basically what you're getting is if it's cover two, and you run hard, and you run your triple fake hard enough, that fade should come open, right? And it's not going to come open like very deep. It might be even a 12-yard fade. You're going to throw it on a line. So you're not taking a drop. He would stick the ball in the gut of the fullback, get his eyes up if it was there. If it was cover three or rotation, we're running a slant on the backside, and that's when he has to just look at the play side corner, and if the corner is bailing hard, or he sees the safety rotate down into that gap, he's coming back and back off his back foot, throwing the ball as hard as he can in at that slant. But beyond that, we started toying with we actually, and it really lent itself very well to doing this. We took a quarterback who had been reading a three technique, who's breathing down his face every play, and we put him back in the pistol, and we ran like a full house pistol, and we did triple option motion. And what he did is he read the alley player, and we ran a seam. And if that alley player came down hard to play the triple action, we threw the seam right behind his ear. So it actually was it was amazing how quickly it developed, because I remember talking. I had a great quarterback, Brennan Ray, and I said, Brennan, we're going to run a little RPO, and he was so excited. And we ran it once, and he goes, "Man, that's so easy." Because when you're running triple, you're looking for like little nuances. Did the face mask go in? Did the shoulder pad turn? And it's such a quick read that now with space, he was able to get it in there. But everything was based off the run. So I know we talked a little bit about this. If you get behind as a triple option team, It was difficult. It was difficult. I had a little PTSD looking back at some of our scores. The one year we played you guys, the if you're down by 40, you're going to chip away. You're just going to chip away and you're going to go as fast as you can. That was a big focus of being able to go no huddle. Hopefully you could speed it up a little bit. But once again, if you have a stemming front and you're trying to go quick, you're going to be in the wrong play. And if you get behind the sticks, if you're not gaining 3 yards of play, then you're going to be doing something late that you're not good at.
Yeah, that every offense has limitations. Uh, Obviously, in what the system you're describing is you're built to control clock and play from ahead. But hey, man, if you're losing by 40, there aren't many good systems out there, no matter what you're running. But so, all right, let me get you out of here on this. We'll wrap it up by let me ask you, how do you equate old school triple option and some of what you're talking about to the read option schemes that exist now? You see what we're doing at Ocean City. Obviously, you see throughout the area and even into the broader football that's being played at the collegiate level and even in the NFL right now. The read option scheme is incredibly popular. The RPO scheme is incredibly popular. We're really just seeing this sort of evolution of the read option game. So how would you compare the popular read option and RPO schemes today to the old school traditional triple?
Well, I think it's formation based, right? So they're running a lot of the same concepts, but they're running out of gun. So the aiming points are different. The blocking scheme is a little bit different. The RPO I told you about earlier is we ran trap up front just so that we could monopolize everybody. But when you have the change of rules where I mean, they're allowing offensive linemen to get kind of down the field on a lot of these RPOs.
Yeah.
They don't call it very often. So if they're going to allow that to happen, then yeah, we're going to stick the ball in the gut of our back, and rather than pitching it to the edge, let's throw a bubble out on the edge. Let's throw a slant behind it. Let's really test them and throw it over their head. But if I had to say, honestly, the closest similarity between old triple and current is what Chip Kelly does. Chip Kelly is running read options all over the place. And yeah, it's zone scheme and all that, but he has eye candy. He has a lot of shifts. He has a lot of motion, and then he's running the ball. First and foremost, Chip Kelly's offense is running the football, and that's kind of I think the closest iteration of it in today's game. And it's kind of funny when Ken, I can't say his name very well, Niedermalolo, who was at Navy for all those years, had his gap year. He went and coached at UCLA with Chip. So it's kind of funny to think like it does have its roots, and it really has to do with what you call something. But football is football at the end of the day. If you're going to read a safety or if you're going to read a down lineman, it doesn't really matter. It's still a read, and you're still getting the ball in the best player's hands, which is usually the quarterback. Um, it also, the number one thing is the space. And I think football over time, space has been its biggest friend. You look in the NFL with pass interference calls. They want to get the ball out on the edge, and they want to reward people that are taking risks. So, as long as the rules of football incentivize that, you're going to have RPO systems that are, reading leverage rather than open space, and the same concepts that we had in the triple.
Yeah, numbers, leverage, and grass, man. That's been a mantra that offensive coaches have been talking about for a while. And you bring up Chip Kelly. It'll be fascinating to see him in the NFL this year with Ashton Genty and what he does there, because his schemes have tended to evolve over time, but they've always featured great run games. So I was talking about that on my show yesterday when I was doing a profile on the most interesting off seasons in the NFL, and I brought up the Las Vegas Raiders because everybody seems to be going in this one direction in the NFL where you bring in the young offensive passing guru to tutor your quarterback and modernize your system that way. But the Raiders are doubling down on old school, right? The oldest head coach in NFL history, Pete Carroll, bringing in Chip Kelly and doubling down on the run game, and they'll be fascinating to watch because Chip is always so creative.
Absolutely. And he's going to run the football. And I love running the football.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Coach, this is a really good conversation, man. I appreciate you coming on.
Thank you for having me. It was great.
Yeah. All right, that's our Whiteboard Wednesday conversation with Coach Brian Hindle talking triple option. Join me tomorrow, State of the Franchise. That's when we profile a different team each week. And tomorrow's team will be the Detroit Lions, one of the more interesting teams in the NFL as well. Until then, though, everybody have a great Wednesday, and we'll catch you on the other side.